Welcome to the PSD Cast with your host, Jason Lumberg with Power Systems Design. With every new technology comes a host of new regulations and taxes, for better or worse. They can help overcome societal barriers, but they can also create their own sort of barriers, slowing the tech's development, and once the fees are sorted out and passed on to consumers, creating a barrier to entry for the average person. One of the fastest growing technologies today, electric vehicles, are caught up in all sorts of red tape and new taxes. Take a new law in Kentucky that'll force places like businesses, churches, or libraries that offer electric charging to the public to pay a monthly usage tax to the state. And on the line to discuss this and other new regulations and their impact on businesses is Sumit Chauhan, co-founder and chief operating officer of CerebrumX, which deals with connected vehicle data trends. So, Sumit, thanks for joining us. And let's start with this. What are the one or two most burdensome regulations for electric vehicle owners and service providers in the United States?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure talking to you. From a regulatory point of view, obviously, I think just to state the context here, the context obviously is that, with the ICE vehicles, which is the internal combustion engine vehicles, going down and also becoming more efficient, basically the tax that is getting collected as part of whatever you pay as your gas at the gas station, is actually going down because of the electrification as well, right? So the overall tax burden on the states, particularly and also at the federal level, is increasing, which means that, apart from all the SOPs that have been given over a period of time for electrification, now we are entering into that twilight zone where state and the federal governments are realizing that, they need to start taxing some of the electrification initiatives that are going on because they are in a deficit from a taxation point of view. So coming back to the regulations, obviously electrification can be done at home, or it can be done, as a public charging infrastructure. And what we'll see is you will see a slew of regulatory tenets that will come in both for the home usage as well as for the public usage of charging stations. From a home point of view, I think you will see a mandate very soon where there is going to be either a static charge or a fixed charge that is going to be put on homeowners who will have charging stations installed at home, because obviously the government needs to collect the road tax or the road usage tax for the electrified vehicles, which obviously cannot be collected at the gas station as it was earlier. So you will either see a static, amount that will be put on anyone who buys an electric vehicle or puts an electric charger at home, or there would be a mandate which is being discussed in some states, which will mandate a separate metering that will happen for the charging stations as well. And obviously, a separate metering means extra cost because the metering will be at a different tariff than the domestic use of electricity. And also putting in a different, a separate meter adds to the infrastructure cost for the, for the electricity providers, whether it is PSEG or PNG or whoever is the provider. They will have to charge that back to the consumers. So it's going to be a little bit of a burden on the end consumers from that point of view. Coming to the public infrastructure, as you mentioned, Kentucky. In fact, it's not just Kentucky. I think Kentucky has been in the news, but there are about 7 states which have announced this, including Iowa, Georgia, I think, and there are a couple of others, Oklahoma. They have similar tenets which have been put in place that anyone who's charging at a public charging station, whoever is the provider, whether it's a church or a business or whatever, not just has to pay a kind of a tax for providing that infrastructure, but also they have to give an estimate of what is the charging that is going to happen, on that charging station. Now, both of these are a little cumbersome and, of course, uncomfortable for these businesses because some of them are even non-profit, like a church or a place of worship, so on and so forth. But I think the key point that we'll keep coming back to is that the state governments are realizing that there is a deficit in terms of the road usage charges, and they're trying to put that tax back on wherever they can, where the electrification and the charging is happening.
Okay, now for this new Kentucky law, what effect do you think it'll have, if any, on the availability of public electric chargers?
I think the worst, or I would say the worst case scenario is that, anyone who was actually planning to put up a charging infrastructure, you will see a dip in that interest itself because, whenever a new law comes in, the understanding of it and the overall, bells and whistles that go along with it, for some of these businesses, which I mentioned are even non-profit, it will just make it more cumbersome for them to go ahead with this. So I think that would be the worst of it because we are in a desperate need for public infrastructure for EV charging. So I think there will be an impact because of that. At a second level, I think because they are, they are required to provide an estimate of what the charging is going to be, for the first few years, it's going to be really, really difficult. Either of the two cases will happen. Either they are going to give an estimate which is overboard because then they'll be paying more for the infrastructure for no rhyme or reason because they've just overestimated the amount of charging and the revenue that they're going to collect from these stations, or they are going to underreport it, in which case some state governments might levy a penalty in case they find out that the usage is far greater than what was estimated. There might be penalties which will come with some interest later on. So all of this is in the working, to be honest. None of it has been made into a law, and we have really started seeing effect of it, but it is going to be enforced very, very soon. And both these aspects in terms of underestimating, overestimating, and the loss of interest of these businesses and public places in terms of installing EV charging infrastructure, I think is going to be under severe strain.
Makes sense. Well, Sumit, before I let you go, how can consumers and businesses educate themselves on this Kentucky law and others like it and what it'll mean for them?
So I think there are definitely some websites which talk about all these laws as they come into effect at a state level. I would have to say that not all of them are completely up to date from what they're coming in. I would strongly suggest that the best way to deal with this is whoever is your provider who provides or distributes electricity, in your county or in your district. You have to look at their website and their bulletin because by law, they have to inform if there are going to be any extra tariffs, which is the key thing here, in terms of any extra tariffs that have to be put in both for public as well as domestic use of EV chargers. At a second level, I would say that, you need to, whenever you buy an electric vehicle, as I mentioned in some states, there are going to be laws or some monies that need to be paid upfront, by electric vehicle owners. So read the fine print because there might be an yearly charge that might come in very soon as you buy an electric vehicle or you install an electric vehicle charger at home. So please do read the fine print because you might not be aware that on top of whatever is the electricity being consumed, there might be a fixed charge on top of that. Currently, whatever I've seen, it ranges from somewhere around $100 to $150 a year, per electric charger port. But obviously, this can change and increase, anytime. So those two are obviously the most important ones. And as CerebrumX, we do keep our website updated in terms of any new laws that come in because we are part of that business from a data point of view, more on the B2B side. but we do keep, the website abreast with whatever changes we have coming up at the state level.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Sumit. I want to thank you for your time.